Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday evening reading and discussion of Swami Ranganathananda's little book, Divine Grace, in which he makes the case that to be fully human is to be fully divine. And it's quite a remarkable case that he makes. We're a good way along in the book, and our sweet reader Swayam will start.
Namaste, everybody. We are on page 20, the second paragraph. When one surrenders everything to God, one becomes a saint. A saint is one in whose heart God has manifested and who is God-filled. Properly understood, that is the most meaningful, lofty, and beautiful consummation of human life. Some of the greatest saints had surrendered their everything and themselves also to God. I, yet not I, but the Christ that liveth in me, said Saint Paul. So also, great God-filled devotees in India always experience this attitude of akinchana bhava, self-effacement of tadyata as belonging to him, as the Narada Bhakti Sutras express it. That is surrender. But
Now,
what a
would you read that last part again, please? So also great God-filled devotees. This is such a key idea. What we're hearing, and of course it has to do, as he says, with the Narada Bhakti Sutras, the heart and soul of the devotional
so
path.
also great as the Narada Bhakti Sutras express it.
I'm
That
sorry, dear, we lost you.
oh
So also great God-filled devotees.
yeah. So also great God-filled devotees in India always experienced this attitude of self-effacement as belonging to him, as the Narada Bhakti Sutras express it. That is surrender. But what a wonderful surrender it is! The surrender of strength, the surrender of fullness, the surrender of true victory. That is the greatest music in the concert of spiritual life, and it breathes energy and dynamism and bears the heroic touch. Whoever does it is a hero.
Now notice that is in italics. That is to draw our attention to it whenever there's a change in font like that. That is the greatest music in the concert. That is the greatest music in the concert of spiritual life. And it breathes energy and dynamism and bears the heroic touch. There it is. This is the case he's making, that when we do this, we remain human, we remain a breathing thing, a jiva, but we become jivan mukta. We become free because of these characteristics of energy, dynamism, and the heroic touch, the fearlessness and dauntlessness of the devotee who is able to hold both the world of dualism and the world of truth in mind at the same time. So, are there any comments from your own experience or wisdom, or any concern or question that this raises?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I was contemplating on why is it that I'm not able to, fully surrender, um, and I realized that it's because of my lack of belief in myself. Because I mean, we all know that life is not a bed of roses, and just because we follow the spiritual path, that nothing that we dislike is ever going to happen. So in my case, the reason I kind of surrender, but I feel like I don't know if I'll be able to stay balanced if something does not go the way I want. So I'm not able to surrender yet. I don't know if that makes sense. I
It
mean, I
makes perfect sense, dear. It makes perfect sense. And welcome to spiritual life. This is exactly it. This is the struggle. As Vivekananda says, the poetry of life is this struggle to become pure enough to where we can embody what the Swami just put in italics for us. It is, no one, virtually no one, can surrender all at once. Of course, we have the story of Scrooge, this beautiful story told by Charles Dickens of something that happens to him in one night. So powerful it is that he dances and says, I'm not the man I was, I'm not the man I was. So Swami Prabhavananda was asked about this. Is such a thing possible? Yes, yes, but very rare, very rare. Most of us, as Swami Sridharananda says, it happens slowly and slowly. It takes a great length of time for us to retrain our nerves and our mind to where we understand that thou art, therefore I am, and surrender all that seems to be the I am to the thou art. But don't feel the least bit concerned or daunted by the fact that it is a struggle. And of course, it's not called the razor's edge for nothing. You just said, I surrender, but will I be able to retain that when something happens that I don't like? Well, this is a conundrum even for the realized soul, according to Adi Shankaracharya.
Can I add also, I think it was in the book of Thomas, directly referring to what you said a moment ago about not having the faith in yourself necessarily. I think it was in the book of Thomas that Christ said, if you cannot believe in yourself, then believe in me. That's what the gods and the realized beings are for. Until you can believe in yourself fully in that regard, you put that on them. And then hopefully, I imagine, hopefully through that, you learn that there's no difference, tatvamasi, but that's just something
Well, that's very well said, and that's exactly it. He that believeth in me shall not taste death. So this is the so that is exactly, Justine is very correct. That is why these great souls exist, so that we can take refuge in them until we join their number. And who knows when that will happen. Thank you, Justine. Anything else from anyone? All right, dear, please read on.
That the surrender of strength, the surrender of fullness, the surrender of true victory. That is the greatest music in the concert of spiritual life. And it breathes energy and dynamism and bears the heroic touch. Whoever does it is a hero, a dhira, as the Sanskrit language expresses it. If to gain life we need strength, to renounce life we need greater strength. If to earn wealth we need strength, to renounce wealth we need greater strength. That is why divine grace and self-surrender and resignation to God in their true forms appear in spiritual life only when man has gained strength of character. Okay, that's in italics. I'll repeat
Please
it.
read it again, yes.
That is why divine grace and self surrender and resignation to God in their true forms appear in spiritual life only when man has gained strength of character. This is not bahubalam or muscular strength, buddhi balam, intellectual strength, or any other strength of worldly will and purpose. But it is the subtlest form of strength known as yoga balam, strength spiritual, which reveals itself in men and women in the course of their spiritual growth, and irrespective of the level of society from which they come and their economic status.
So notice that the Swami makes us a promise. Would you read that promise again? It is known as this is the subtlest form of strength, starting there.
But it's the subtlest form of strength known as yoga balam, strength spiritual, which reveals itself in men and women in the course of their spiritual growth.
There is the promise. It reveals itself in the course of your spiritual growth. And then he makes it unqualified.
Irrespective of the level of society from which they come and their economic status.
So it's not dependent on class, caste, wealth. It's not dependent on that. It's dependent on their strength of character, which we build and rebuild every moment we practice our spiritual lives. Any comments, thoughts, questions from anyone?
This is
Brother
what
Shankara.
Hari Om.
Hari Om Bala.
This is what the Upanishad says. The self will reveal to whom it decides. That is what which reveals itself.
Yes. This is the Yoga Balam. This is
Yes.
this is the spiritual strength, spiritual. but it is, as is said, you don't merit it by your spiritual practice. But without spiritual practice, it will not happen. Or at least it's very rare that it will.
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, hi, my dear.
I was reading Bhagavatam today, this morning, and I saw that Vyas Maharshi asks Narada about his story. And Narada says the same thing. He wandered in towns and cities and everywhere looking for that divine. And then finally he sat underneath the tree and started meditating upon him. Then he got the clear vision of divine. That's what he was saying. Just do this.
Yes,
Meditate, practice, continue to practice. That's what he was
Yes.
telling Vyasa.
yes,
thought
and he said that I had no peace of mind. I
Exactly.
wandered and wandered and wandered without peace of mind.
Everywhere, right.
And then I was given instruction. I followed the instruction, and I gained the knowledge. And therefore, this is the thing. Unless we turn within, unless we stop looking in the outside world,
Then
it
he
is
said
not to be found in the outside world. That's why the Swami said it's not muscular strength, it's not intellectual strength, it's not something you'll find outside. We turn inward to find it, as Justine was pointing out earlier. And when we do this, we can take recourse, we can take refuge in these incarnations and saints and deities and ask them to share their strength and their passion for this with us. Mumukshatvam is not normally translated as passion, but it is. It is a kind of spiritual passion. It is, as Swami Swahananda spoke of it, it is zeal.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you.
Shankara?
Yes, dear. I think Jeff had
Oh,
something.
yes, somebody else has.
Jeff, was there something?
No, sir, it wasn't me.
Oh, okay. All right. If there's nobody else, then Swayam, go right ahead.
Okay. I was going to say that sometimes this intellectual strength, it is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it is helpful for us to contemplate, maybe do reasoning to reach and turn inwards. But on the other hand, it also sort of takes away the innocence of faith.
You're absolutely right. This is why it's such a fine line to walk, dear. Where do we find our encouragement? And discrimination, this reasoning, is necessary. Without viveka, without discrimination, what is real? What is unreal in the sense of meaningful to my spiritual growth? What is good rather than pleasant, as Patanjali puts it? This reasoning must be there. But as you say, it doesn't quite fit with the heart. This is something of the mind. The heart has, as you say, and it was delightful that you used the word innocence, the innocence of the faith of the heart. But this is again this eternal. As long as we're embodied, as long as we are seeking on this eternal quest for enlightenment or realization or God or whatever you want to call it, there is the mind and there is the heart. And we can't do away with either of them. You can't do away with the mind. You simply wouldn't be able to cope with the world. This is why I'm going to make a very careful study during the break in August of Jill Bolte Taylor's new book called Whole Brain Living, because she discusses this in great detail. The 4 parts of the mind, 4 characters, as she calls them. And I'll be very interested to see how she says that this harmony and the conversation among the 4 characters, as she speaks of it, how this takes place. So you'll hear from me after the break about what Jill Bolte Taylor says. You may count on it, because I'm so impressed with her, and that new book of hers is, I've just put a toe in it, so to speak. So I know what's there a little bit. Anyhow, anything else from anyone?
I think you mentioned the peace of mind earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm probably not the only one, but I'm going to say for some of us, because I doubt this is original to me, but I often have this feeling of, what good is all this practice if I don't have peace of mind? Why am I doing all this if I don't constantly have peace of mind, or don't frequently have peace of mind? And that's been for me one of the big struggles, is, to be able to continue to commit to it when your mind is in turmoil, which for many of us who have neurotic issues, it can be very difficult to experience that.
Amen. Which is why the Swami says that to have the surrender necessary to offer that too at the feet of the divine requires this strength, this super strength. And so it is a constant dance between our, as you put it, our neurotic tendencies and our spiritual tendencies. And this is why we must be fearless and dauntless and persist and persist and persist. This Sunday, something was brought to my attention today that will be included in the talk on Sunday. And that is the 9th step promises, as discussed in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And boy, howdy, to remain sober, for an alcoholic to remain sober for years and years and not slip away and reach the 9th of the 12 steps. This is really requires dauntlessness. You must not be daunted by all that assails you. You must not take refuge in self-medication again. So anyway, you'll hear about that this Sunday. It's very inspiring what's said. That book is clearly a book of true inspiration.
Brother Shankara, this is Jeff.
Yes, Jeff.
To speak to something that Justine just said, I think if you keep at this, if you maintain your practices and stay with it, I think you make progress even though you may not realize it at the time because you're in it, you're too close to it, like you can't see the forest for the trees. But if you stay with it, then you begin to see your spiritual life from a broader perspective, and you can see that you're making progress.
Yes.
Just gotta stay with it.
This comes around to what Swami said about the innocence of faith, is that your faith simply becomes a bigger challenge at this point. So the faith becomes another part of the battle. The innocence of faith is mean, innocence is like a white sheet of paper. It's there to be corrupted. So yeah, your faith is no longer innocent, but now it's something different. It's something more significant. It's something more tempered, more fierce, more damaged even. So it becomes, there's faith all along. It doesn't matter how many visions or realizations you have. In the dry moments, your faith has to carry you through. That those things really did happen. That you really did see that magical thing that is not explained by modern reality, modern concepts of reality. And that's what carries you through is the faith. So the faith is always there. It just changes form.
Everything is always changing form. Amen. The only thing that does not change form is that which is behind our experience of all this, the witness self. The witness self.
Hi, Ma, I think you were muted. It looked like you were trying to talk. Oh, okay.
I'm fine. I agree with you. Thank you.
I was going to say that it is faith that probably helps us uh, be courageous rather than just a bravado, if I'm pronouncing that word correctly.
You are pronouncing it correctly, and bravado is like smoke. Strength is like steel. Courage is like steel. It will withstand great heat and extreme stress. But bravado, not at all. Thank you for making that distinction, Swami. That's very good. Anything else from anyone? All right, dear, read on, please.
It is only when one cultivates that strength that he or she will experience the value of true freedom, the freedom of the spirit, and the true relaxation arising from emptying of self, small s, and filling it with God, resulting in spontaneity and naturalness as of a child.
Okay, read that passage again, please. That is so perfect. What a way to finish this little section.
It is only when one cultivates that strength that he or she will experience the value of true freedom, the freedom of the spirit, and the true relaxation arising from emptying of self and filling it with God, resulting in spontaneity and naturalness as of a child.
That innocence that you were speaking of, dear. Anything from anyone before we go on to the next section?
The innocence returns is what it sounds like.
Well,
In that sense, it's like a black belt. You start as a white belt, you go to black belt, and as the belt frays, it turns white again. So that's the karate, evolution is from white to white again, and you begin to learn from your students as a child. So that innocence comes back, I think.
Well, this is what Swami Vivekananda says. We must never be daunted or discouraged by the fact that things seem to be going downward for a time. He said, we're only going into a trough, that everything in universe is waveform. Everything in universe is in wave form. And so this Vivekananda asserts, without qualification, everything is in wave form. And so we go into a trough, and he says, what's happening when we're going into the trough? It was said earlier, I think by Jeff, that sometimes we don't see what's happening to us. We don't see that we're gathering strength. But that's exactly what Vivekananda says. During those seemingly down periods, those troughs in the wave form, we're gathering strength to ascend even higher. So the trend line, as economists say, the trend line is upward. It's ever upward, but it sometimes doesn't seem like it in the moment. So we persist, we persist. Swami Prabhavananda's first instruction for meditation is the chosen ideal is you yourself. No different. Learn to feel that living presence. The second instruction is patience. The third instruction is persistence. We must not become impatient with ourselves or with the process. And we must persist day in, day out, day in, day out. And the fourth instruction is expectation. The expectation that it will result in our illumination. We will, as we are patient and persistent, it will result in our full knowledge, called Savikalpa Samadhi. The knowledge is something that happens within time, space, and causation. We can't call Nirvikalpa Samadhi knowledge in that sense. It's something beyond definition. So we can only talk about Savikalpa Samadhi. But if we attain to Savikalpa Samadhi, which is what the Swami is talking about here, then something extraordinary happens. And there's no going back. Anything else before we start 14?
I was going to say that the choice of the words spontaneity and naturalness as of a child, that is something to keep in mind. Being around children a lot, when they are natural and spontaneous, and so without a filter, as we say, it never comes out hurtful. Whatever they say, it comes out joyful and humorous, even if it is something they are pointing out to a deficiency in us. But when we interact and we use the filter, I mean, we have to be careful, otherwise it sounds hurtful. So that spontaneity of naturalness of children is just, I mean, it's priceless.
Boy, is that the right word. In Zen terms, a beginner's mind, a child's mind. Thank you, Swam. Anything else from anyone? Okay, let's plunge ahead.
Just 1 second, Naveen's phone is ringing and he's picking it up. So, okay. Section 14, True Self-Surrender. Two outstanding examples. Section 14, True Self-Surrender. Two outstanding examples. That is why when weak people say, I resign myself to God, I'm nothing, I'm nobody, the words do not ring true. The presence of the undisciplined, unrefined ego is palpable behind their words and demeanor. Their humility is fake. We have plenty of such fake humility in India, masquerading as piety. There is no genuineness in that surrender. But when a devotee like Hanuman of the Ramayana says, I have surrendered everything to Rama, I have installed him in my heart, I am just his servant, the words ring true because he was strong, fearless, highly intelligent, and efficient. Buddhimatam Varishtam, the greatest among the intelligent, says the line in Sanskrit about him in India's Ramanama hymns. In our own time, after a brilliant life of great achievements in East and West, condensed in a brief but intense 10 years of his brief life, a Swami Vivekananda could say, I surrender everything to Sri Ramakrishna. In fact, in his lectures in America and India, there are wonderful passages expressing this genuine Hanuman type of surrender, of self surrender. Towards the end of his famous Madras lecture on the sages of India, after expounding the life and work of Sri Shankara and Sri Chaitanya of the medieval period, he concludes with the following touching reference to his own Guru, Sri Ramakrishna. Now, my brothers, if you do not see the hand, the finger of providence, it is because you are blind, born blind indeed. If time comes and another opportunity, I will speak to you more fully about him. Only let me say that if I have told you one word of truth, it was his and his alone. And if I have told you many things which were not true, which were not correct, which were not beneficial to human race, they were all mine, and on me is the responsibility.
So, two examples Hanuman, Vivekananda. And notice that Vivekananda takes total responsibility for anything. In other words, whatever comes from the mistaken place comes from his and he talks about this in his late letters, that the ego is ever there, and he made mistakes. But he says, I celebrate those mistakes because they brought me to what I am at this moment. And there's a very great lesson in that. Of course, what he says about Sri Ramakrishna and breaker of this world's chain, it cannot be recommended enough that you read that. It's available on the website, the center's website, breaker of this world's chain. And he talks of Sri Ramakrishna. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. And as Swami Ranganathananda pointed out some pages back, the incarnations and their great saints have this ability to set us free. What does set us free? Remove the effects of our karma. So that we are no longer imprisoned and forced into another lifetime by our karma. This, in Christian terms, is called salvation, forgiveness of sin. So this is who Vivekananda is pointing to in this passage. This great being who took, along with his wife Sri Sharda Devi, human form to unchain us and set us free. Anything at all from anyone before we go ahead to section 15?
I feel so blessed to be in this era when still Vivekananda is, he's not too far removed in terms of uh, the, the time, the calendar. Because with Hanuman, sometimes, it's become sort of too far away from time. So it's an imagination, and potentially, we could get into this, is it real mythology or whatever. But with Vivekananda, since he's closer, it's so much more easier to grasp and hold on and feel that that power.
Well, let me tell you a little story about some devotees in Hollywood, at the Hollywood Center. They are Hanuman followers. They're led by a woman. She is absolutely head over heels for Hanuman. They chant the Hanuman Chalisas at the appropriate times, and they hold a puja for Hanuman, their own puja in the Hollywood Temple. They have had experiences of Hanuman, living experiences that are confirmed by the Swamis, Swahananda in particular. I don't know that Sarvadevananda, I've never talked to him about it. But Swami Swahananda confirmed the truth of these experiences. So Hanuman is said to be deathless. He's said to be ever living. Now, with regard to Vivekananda, you can speak to many devotees that have had personal experiences of Vivekananda, many. And if you want to give yourself the opportunity to have such an experience, first of all, you can just pray for it, which is what happened here in 1975. Or you can go to Vivekananda Retreat Ridgely in Mid-State New York. Or if you're on the West Coast, you can go to the Vivekananda House in South Pasadena. Vivekananda lived for 6 weeks in what is now called the Vivekananda House or Swamiji House in South Pasadena. He spent a total of 14 weeks in the Ridgely Manor, which is now Vivekananda Retreat Ridgely. At either place, there is the tangible presence of Vivekananda. And you can pray for an experience of him. So both of these beings, these heroic figures, as the Swami Ranganathananda calls them, these great heroes, they're still present. But you'll notice that Hanuman gives all credit to Rama. He said he does everything by the power of Rama's name. And Vivekananda says he did everything by the power of Ramakrishna's name. Anything else from anyone, dears?
Hi, Brother Shankara, Samesh here.
Yes, so good to hear from you, Sumesh.
Yeah, I joined late. But I was really amazed by this, if anything, were not true, which were not correct, and which were not beneficial to the human race, they were all mine, and on me is the responsibility. So I checked, what is the definition of responsibility? Like we all know, and we mix it up with blame, like that.
Uh-huh.
And I saw that it's the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone. It's nothing, it's just a state of having a duty to deal with, nothing to be blamed about or anything.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Yeah.
This is why yes, exactly. Well done, Sumesh. This is exactly it. He's not saying, I am to blame for anything. No, he late in his life, he wrote letters celebrating these mistakes.
Yeah.
Because he said, from them I learned, and they've made me what I am now. So taking responsibility for those mistakes and those duties and learning from where error had been made. Yeah. He became what he finally became at the end of his life. And so, yes. Thank you so much. Very well said. You have such a tidy mind, looking things up and making sure you understand what they mean. Very good. Good on you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anything before we move on? Okay, we've got another 15 minutes. Let's see what the Swami says further.
Section 15. The strength of self-reliance and the super strength of self-surrender. Swami Vivekananda used to convey the meaning of this philosophy of self-surrender and saintliness as the crown of self-reliance and manliness in a humorous vein in these words. The Muslims have a holy celebration every year and they generally sacrifice a goat on that occasion. So, intelligent Muslims will purchase the animal a month earlier and feed it well, so that when they sacrifice it, they get more meat out of it. That is the way in spiritual life. First, strengthen yourself, assert yourself, and then sacrifice yourself. Deny yourself in surrender to God through a super strength. That is the correct attitude and way. First comes manliness, then comes saintliness or godliness. Erect your saintliness on your manliness. That will be a powerful saintliness. So work hard, build up your individuality, and then when you're strong and spiritually mature as a man, you look up and see a greater courage and a greater strength beckoning you, which makes you experience and say, "Not I, but thou. Thy will be done." This is the meaning of Sri Krishna's presenting the full message of self-surrender and divine grace in the last 18th chapter of Gita as the final message of religion. Whereas previously he had always said, "Be strong, have faith in yourself, and face your problems manfully," as in verse 33 of chapter 11, after showing Arjuna his Vishwarupa or universal form. The next quote is the verse from Gita in English. "Therefore do you rise from this dejection and weakness, and acquire the glory of manliness by conquering your enemies, thwarting obstacles, and enjoy the prosperous domain of your life." Before that, in verse 14 of chapter 7, Sri Krishna had struck the first powerful initial note of divine grace in a message of hope and assurance. Man is caught up in the delusion of his being the truncated ego and its organic system, and under that delusion behaves in petty ways and experiences suffering and sorrow, and scatters the same around in society. This is Maya, which makes him forget his real nature and his intimate relationship with the Divine, the Lord of Maya, and with all other beings. It is divine grace that releases him from this Maya and restores him to God. Verily, this is again Bhagavad Gita, verily, this, my divine Maya, constituted of the three gunas of sattva, rajas, and tamas, is difficult to cross over. Those who take refuge in me alone cross over this Maya. But now, towards the end, he sings a different note and presents that initial note as the final note. As we have seen, now I tell you the profoundest secret. Having achieved all this manliness, say to yourself, and experience that everything, including my ego, belongs to the Lord. There is nothing of me and mine. Should I stop there for discussion?
Yes, but I'm tempted to say, read this entire section again up to this point. And anyone who has something to say, just interrupt as we go along, because he's developing this thought as he goes along. So I'd like you to go back to the beginning of 15 and and read along. And anyone who has anything to say, just interrupt, and make the comment from your own wisdom or experience, or raise whatever concern or question you have. So please just start that again.
Okay.
This is the absolute, this is the acme right here.
Okay. Section 15, the strength of self-reliance and the super strength of self-surrender. Swami Vivekananda used to convey the meaning of this philosophy of self-surrender and saintliness as the crown of self-reliance and manliness in a humorous vein in these words. The Muslims have a holy celebration every year, and they generally sacrifice a goat on that occasion. So, intelligent Muslims will purchase the animal a month earlier and feed it well, so that when they sacrifice it, they get more meat out of it. That is the way in spiritual life. First, strengthen yourself, assert yourself, and then sacrifice yourself. Deny yourself in surrender to God through a super strength. That is the correct attitude and way. First comes manliness, then comes saintliness or godliness. Erect your saintliness on your manliness. That will be a powerful saintliness. So work hard, build up your individuality, and then, when you're strong and spiritually mature as a man, you look up and see a greater courage and a greater strength beckoning you, which makes you experience and say, not I, but thou.
Okay,
Thy will be done.
hold it there. Notice this complete affirmation of your becoming whatever it is that is within your ability to become. Assert that individuality, build that individuality. It's been said so many ways. Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. Buckminster Fuller said, when you are working in cooperation with the intentions of universe, resources are never a problem. So these things are an assertion from these people from these points of view, these great teachers, each in their own way, that when you give vent to that which is created in you, not only do wonderful things happen, but as he says at the end, you find something else beckoning to you, as it were Krishna tapping you on the shoulder and saying, yes, this is all wonderful. Now let me show you something even greater. And that's what he says that Sri Krishna does in chapter 18 of the Gita. So please read on, Swayam, unless anyone else has anything they'd like to add.
Shankara, I would like to add something.
Yes,
I think
Sumesh.
this is like the gold mine for me, because when I look at things that like when I'm blaming circumstances or blaming other people, or when I'm not able to do what I want to do, or be what I want to be, or have what I want to have. This is it. That if I don't bring my manliness there and stand for it and achieve that, not build myself that okay, it's me who's gonna have what I want, or do what I want, or be what I want. Then once I build that strength, that's when I move to saintliness or godliness or whatever.
Yes.
But this is
Yes.
before that. It's if I can't achieve simple things in life, or blame. I give you example. Just before the class, my wife is like, "Oh, air conditioning is not working fine." So I'm like, now I have to. But then it's at that moment, first I go, why you have to tell now? And then I'm like, it's a powerful choice at this moment that what I choose. It's that, and I can still get from whatever I want to get from this session and still do other things. So,
Yes.
but it is amazing unless we build ourselves strong. This is pure. Like a book knowledge, or I don't know how else to say it.
Yes, exactly. It's all something of the intellect, and
Yes,
that is not sufficient.
correct.
But as Swami Vivekananda, being the master of words and metaphors, reduced it to this simple formula: first bread,
Mhm.
then football, then the Gita. First, we solve the problem of poverty so that we don't have the wolf at the door.
Mhm.
Hmm? We assert ourselves in such a way to make sure that we have enough. Make sure, take care I'm not thirsty. Make sure I'm well fed. Lay me down tonight in a restful bed. Just this is we overcome poverty. Then football. Why football? Well, you've heard it said, I don't know how many times from here. Football is a metaphor for the game of life, the most complicated and demanding game that human beings play as a team sport. Soccer, or football as it's properly called, is insanely demanding. But it is a great metaphor for the game of life. If you master the game of life, then you have something, as the Swamis say in this book, Ranganathananda and Vivekananda, then you have something to surrender. Then you have a manliness, a womanliness, a humanity on which you can build a spiritual life. So never be shy about doing what's necessary to not be in poverty and not be behind the eight ball, as they say, in the game of life. Know that you are the master of the game of life. Then you have something to surrender, something to renounce. And sometimes it's very difficult for us because we think, oh, there's something shameful about this. There's this is what about other people? Well, yes, all that needs to be taken into account after you decide what you want to do and are doing it. Then you can say, is there anything shameful about this? How does this affect other people, and what compromises do I need to make? And then we do this thing of calculation of consequences, which is probably the most comical thing that humans do. It said, if you want to make God laugh, just make a plan. So The spontaneity and innocence of a child, how hard that is to attain. So it's now 8:30. Anything else from anyone before we sign off for this evening and for the rest of this week?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I think one of the most important components of building the strength is the ability to know that, I mean, that you may not get what you want and accept that defeat with dignity. For example, play the entire regular season and division, whatever, in Super Bowl, get to the Super Bowl, but lose it with dignity
Yes,
is a sign of more strength than actually winning it in a way.
yes. To play the game of life with dignity. There's a wonderful poem by Rabia in the book Love Poems from God that says, live with dignity, women. Live with dignity, men. Nothing enhances your beauty so much. Yes, be dignified in your victory. Be dignified in your defeat. Yes, so difficult. How many times have we seen, using the Super Bowl metaphor, the guys who lost take off their helmet and throw them on the ground and sit down on the bench and bury their head in their hands? Oh, well. Still some things to learn. They're doubtless very good at what they do, or they wouldn't be where they are. But you're so right, Swami. Dignity.
Brother
Anything?
Shankara,
Yes, dear.
this is Jeff.
Yes, Jim.
I have a comment and a question, both of them pertaining to the paragraph at the bottom of page 23, where the Swami says, as we have seen, now I tell you the profoundest secret, having achieved all this manliness, say to yourself and experience that everything, including my ego, belongs to the Lord. There is nothing of me and mine. So naturally that's surrender, as we've been discussing. But what popped out for me was everything, including my ego, belongs to the Lord. And we think of the ego as our adversary in spiritual practice. And if we, like the passage says here, if we realize that the ego is God's stuff too, and there is nothing that isn't God's stuff, then we relinquish everything, including our concept of me and mine. So that really popped for me. My question is, he has quotes around that, and he precedes it with "as we have seen." So I'm wondering who or what is being quoted there.
Let me see. I don't believe I know, dear.
It could be that it's his commentary on the shloka above, but I'm not sure about that.
I don't have the page numbers here, so I'm not.
Okay, it's in section 15. It's right after the second shloka.
Jeff, do you mean, therefore do you rise? That's a quote, single quote. Do you see that on the top of the page 23?
No, it's at the bottom of page 23.
Oh, verily, this my divine Maya? That's the one you're talking about.
After that, in the Swami's text, but now toward the end, he sings a different note. and presents that initial note as the final note, as we have seen, and then the passage that's quoted. I don't understand what is being quoted there.
The quote, I think, is the English translation of the Gita verse. I may be wrong, but he's going back and forth between the different chapters of the Gita. First, the 18th, and then the second, and then sorry, 18th, 11th, and 8th. So maybe that's what he's saying, that he sings a different note, presents the initial note as the final note, as we have seen.
My guess is that he's been quoting Swami Vivekananda quite a lot. So that's what I thought, but I may be wrong.
It's Krishna to Arjuna.
I'm finding it here. Hang on.
Yes, Krishna to Arjuna.
No, give me the lines that just preceded. Jeff?
The paragraph begins, but now towards the end, he sings a different note.
I can't find it, dear.
And it's right after the second shloka in.
I've scrolled through and I'm just not finding it. So give me the quote again. What is it that's in quotes that you're asking about?
Okay. Now I tell you the profoundest secret. Having achieved all this manliness, say to yourself and experience that everything, including my ego, belongs to the Lord. There is nothing of me and mine.
And that's what's in quotes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a quote from the Gita. That's a quote from chapter 18 of the Gita.
Okay, thank you.
That's what's being quoted. That's at the very beginning of the chapter, where he says, I'm telling you the profoundest secret. And this business, all that we can possibly experience, as Vivekananda says, there is only one existence. There cannot be two. Swami Yogeshananda put it this way: consciousness as is primary and is not plural. Everything is contained within consciousness. We did not invent or create consciousness. Consciousness is the action of the divine. We have a reflection of consciousness, which I call our awareness. Our awareness is a reflection. Our self-awareness, our awareness of the world around us. We do not get to consciousness until we turn within. Then we penetrate the veil of this awareness and all of its contents, and we reach this silence, which is of the nature of consciousness. So he's quoting the Gita. I'm glad we sorted that out. Anything else from anyone?
Thank you.
Jyoti, you can go ahead, dear.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone? Sometimes, because of my vision, dear, it's just hard for me to find things. So.
It's almost 8:40.
Yes.
I'll hold my question to the next time.
Oh, no, go ahead, dear. It's all right.
Okay. So one of the key sentences I think is in the middle of page 23. Man is caught up in the delusion of his being the truncated ego. So
Yes,
the truncated ego, and then we sort of get
yes,
to
that
the
there is only one ego. The truncated ego is the reflection within us of this sense of individuality. There is only one ahamkara. There is only one I maker, only one ego. And it is the divine that is projecting this. And having created these stardust spacesuits as a dwelling place within time, space, and causation, there is a reflection of that ego. And this is the truncated or fragmented reflection of the ego. And this is why Sri Chaitanya says at the beginning of his prayer, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean. That is to say, that which is the reflection will be perfect. And we then see that reflection perfectly and are overwhelmed by it. This is Savikalpa Samadhi. Does that get it, Swam?
yes, Brother Shankara.
If there's anything else, please go ahead.
And thank you. I appreciate that summarization. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone before we sign off? All right. Please don't be shy. If there is something, please say it. All right, dears. So until the next time we have a chance to be together will be Saturday, when we study a book called How to Know God, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, as translated by and commented on by Swami Prabhavananda. And then on Sunday, we'll have part 2 of the talk that was begun last Sunday on Sankhya, the Sankhya philosophy, and the 24 cosmic principles and the 3 gunas. And as I said, something was brought to my attention today, which is a perfect expression of the 3 gunas when we become pure. And it is the 9th step, promises of Alcoholics Anonymous. So we'll talk about that on Sunday. And so, a great good night to you. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that can bind us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, Amen, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, 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 and beneficence be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe, may we be healthy, may we be cheerful, may we have peace of mind, and may we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Any final thought from anyone? All right, dears. As Jackie Gleason used to say, and away we go.